Hello and welcome back to the Depression Vacation podcast.
That's this one. Yeah. You're in the right place, guys.
Episode 22, because we're up to 22 fucking episodes 22. At this point. Yeah, I didn't even know, like, I had this big deal that I was going to be like, hey, this is our 20th episode 2 weeks ago, and then totally forgot that it was the 20th episode when it happened.
I think it's appropriate that it's the 22nd episode because Taylor Swift launched the Eras Tour this week, and good for her. So this is the 22nd episode in honor of Taylor Swift.
Is this the one that got fucked by Ticketmaster when she tried to,
Oh, yes. Yes. I do not have tickets to see Taylor Swift.
Yeah, so. I read a really interesting retrospective of that when it happened, because I know you and I had been talking beforehand about, like, angsty white men alt-rock from the 90s beforehand. Yes. And Pearl Jam, of course, came to mind, because Pearl Jam also, like, a weird champion of women's issues. Like, Eddie Vedder actually, like, during their Unplugged segment, stopped playing at one point to write in Sharpie on his arm, women's rights to choose, in 94, when that was not as popular of a message. But they went on I had totally forgotten about this, except it's ingrained in a couple of Simpsons episodes in Random Talks. They went on a crusade against Ticketmaster in the 90s.
Pearl Jam.
Yeah, they were the world's biggest band at the time. And Ticketmaster, because they went on this, like, crusade over them and took them to, like, court, they basically fucked them. And that's partly why Pearl Jam ceased to be the world's biggest band, is that for a couple of years they were relegated to venues that didn't have a deal with Ticketmaster, and they were not allowed to play. Like, they basically got iced out by Ticketmaster. So they were playing, instead of being the biggest band in the world playing, like, Shea Stadium, they were playing, like, 100 to 300 maybe people in a club for a good 2.5 years until Golden Voice came on the scene. So.
Oh, wow. See, that's the thing that's breaking my heart for this year, because so many of my favorite artists are going on tour this year, and I have to pay for a wedding, so I don't get to go to those concerts.
You know what's funny? I had a dream a couple of nights ago that Fall Out Boy was playing a show in Pennsylvania, and I think it's because we've talked about this. We've talked about it
so many times, because they really did me dirty there.
Yeah. Make me go to New Jersey to see you.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I thought about it, but I'm not going to. It's just too much money and too much hassle, and I'm upset about it.
Yeah, well, weddings are fucking expensive.
Dude, yeah, they're very, very expensive. I was just talking to somebody recently about, I'm paying for my wedding. My wedding, like, I am paying per month, like, twice my rent to the venue.
Oh, so you're doing a payment plan for your wedding?
Yeah, I'm doing a payment plan. I didn't save money for this. So, yeah, I mean, but we just booked our DJ this week, so all we have left is a florist, but the venue has, like, an in-house florist that I think we're going to use. So stay tuned on that, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but, like, my sister's wedding was a pretty huge affair, and it was like a 250-person wedding. I was saying maybe 300, but there were lots of people there. And they ended up, I don't know the dollar amount because I wasn't the one who got married, but I believe that they did not spend nearly as much for what essentially was like a six-figure wedding, because my fantastic mom, like, made it her project it was the first year and a half of her retirement, essentially, up until that wedding. And she, like, grew all the flowers herself over the course of, like, a year plus. Yeah, the wedding venue. So they got married in St. Margaret Mary's Catholic Church, but the actual reception where everything took place was in my neighbor Jack's yard, who has this fantastic, like, open backyard. So they just erected a tent there. My parents actually bought all of the booze for the wedding on a cruise that they had gone on, like, 3 months prior, because it was so much cheaper in, like, the Caribbean islands. And so they brought back, like, 4 suitcases worth of booze for the wedding. Which,
oh my gosh.
It does save you money, but unfortunately, if you buy your own booze for your wedding, when the bartender goes home, the booze stays. And so, like, people were doing lots of shots, getting completely wasted at the end, like, way beyond wasted. Like, and then some other things happened, too, that were weird, but I'm not going to get into them on here. Just, if you buy your own booze for your wedding, make sure you put it away when the bartender leaves.
Yeah. Well, the thing with our wedding, we're not doing liquor. We're just doing beer and wine.
I think that's a
and then
good
the
idea.
Champagne toast. So that'll be good. I mean, the whole thing is covered in the cost of the venue. So, like, the catering is in-house, the bartender's in-house, the alcohol's in-house. Everything is, like, just toward the venue does it.
Yeah.
And so the whole venue catering XYZ it's running us about like $10,000, but that's like with all of that included, which is, I know it sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But it's actually cheaper than a lot of different options that we had. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. I'm not happy about paying for it, but, it is what it is. I'm a 21st century woman, can't make my dad pay for everything anymore.
Yeah, I think Kathy and Steve ended up paying for a lot of their wedding themselves, but my parents definitely chimed in for a lot of it, and it was a good time. Yeah,
my dad is pitching in on the DJ and the photographer, so that's nice of him to do. Takes a little bit off our plate. But overall, I am happy that I'm paying for it because it makes me feel like I'm not obligated to listen to how anybody else thinks the wedding should be.
Oh, yeah. Like, there was a little bit of that, I think, with Kathy's wedding. Like, my mom is very much like... She's a fantastic lady who just likes to do everything and do it very well. And it just seemed like, especially since Kathy was I want to say like a first year law student, maybe second year, but she was definitely in law school when this was all going on, adjusting to that, having to move, and just like there was a lot of stress involved with her with that wedding that I felt didn't need to actually happen.
Be a thing.
Yeah. My entire mantra through life is like, eliminate as much unnecessary work and stress as possible.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a reason for doing something, you should maybe reconsider doing it.
That's a pretty good way to look at it. And honestly, that's been kind of my approach with the wedding because, and I was talking to Ryan about this, with the way that I grew up with money being such an issue.
Yeah.
A lot of my childhood was adjusting to fit our money situation. So like having to do, like when my mom got married, I don't remember if I told you this before or not, but she got remarried when I was 15, 16.
Was this the post-Ghost Hunter affair marriage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
I know where I am in the timeline
now. So we ended up having the wedding at her church or at our church. And the reception was in their like community hall. And my brother was the DJ, which was basically just hooking up his iPod to a speaker and like...
Could be worse, I suppose.
Right, yeah. She cooked her own wedding cake. It was chocolate peanut butter. And
this sounds good to me so far.
Well, right, and it was a potluck. That was the other part of it, too. It was a potluck. And I was like, she got all of her decorations from Oriental Trading. Remember Oriental Trading?
Oh, my mom actually, I'll tell you a tangent to this when you're done with your story. But yes, I'm very familiar with the Oriental Trading Company.
Well, I mean, just a long story short is that, we cut costs everywhere. But now that I'm a woman of means, I have thrown I've thrown money at every problem that's come my way. Like, we're paying for the venue to, like, set up and tear down. Because they were like, oh, that package is like $800 and...
Oh, for $800? Yeah, don't clean up your own wedding.
I was like, no, I'm not going to wander around because I'm going to be drunk. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be drunk.
Be drunk.
And I'm not like wobbling around picking up my own wedding. That's not happening. So I'm throwing money at problems when it comes to the wedding.
I clean up trash better when I've had a few.
I will say it's probably more entertaining. But I mean, like going around in my wedding dress or having to change out of my wedding dress and then go home. And then what happens on our wedding night. Like I don't want to clean up my wedding and then I'm going to be dead tired. I'm not going to want to do anything. So yeah.
It's interesting you said potluck because I have had a couple of weddings that never have done a potluck particularly, but have tried to potluck certain aspects of it. For instance, my one cousin's wedding of like the 28 cousins I have, they did it mostly non-traditional venue, and their idea actually was rather than having a photographer, like they had the idea of like, hey, everybody, could you bring maybe cameras and just take candid pictures here and there, so we can save money on this. And that really offended my parents they were not a fan of the level of non-traditional wedding it was anyway. And there were a lot of other things about the wedding that, were not cool to our family particularly. Like my sister's boyfriend was invited and then uninvited. And so, and we were going to this wedding en route to a vacation. And so he's like, okay, I guess I'll just go find a bar and hang out for 4 or 5 hours.
Jeez.
Which apparently he had a better time there, he said, than he would have otherwise. But yeah, I thought the idea of like, because photographers are fucking expensive and videographers.
Right, yeah.
So the concept of maybe potlucking that to people isn't the worst idea in the world, I think, if you're trying to save money.
Well, what we're going to do is ceremony is completely off limits for people to be taking their own picture.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, our photographer's only staying through like the important stuff in the reception. So the father-daughter dance, all that stuff, the toasts, whatnot. But when it comes down to just like all the dancing and things like that, I'm pretty much just gonna rely on people with their cell phones to take pictures. And that's what Ryan's cousin did last. They got married in the summer of 21. And that's what they did was they had a photographer, but then just like collected pictures from everyone from the reception, and it turned out like really nice to get candid photos that way. So that's basically what we're going to do with that.
Very cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. You were saying something about Oriental trading.
Oh, yeah. So my mom actually, because we talked a little bit about her, like, doing a lot of cool things and doing them as well as she could. She actually ran what I thought was an innovative party company in the 90s as, like, a side hustle while she was raising kids, because, like, raising kids on your own while the husband just goes to work is actually a super toxic way to, like, do things. And she was always a doer, and she just needed to do things. So she had this company called Party in a Box, that the whole concept of it was she was a baker, and for a flat fee of like $20 to $25, like in the 90s, she would deliver like these branded yellow boxes that she got from the Oriental Trading Company with this very off shade of yellow that was not replicated anywhere I've ever seen, but it was like the Party in a Box brand of it. She would deliver a cake, all of the like party fixtures and fixings, like banners, cake designed to whatever you want to make, and and delivered to you essentially.
That is so cute.
I thought it was a really good idea. She said there were some copycats that like took the idea and had the resources other than just like a mother of 3 young kids to actually like run it better. But I've never seen anything like that quite pop up again. And I thought that was a pretty brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But we used to get Oriental Trading Company boxes like all the time, and the catalog was all over our house growing up as a result of that. So I'm very familiar with the Oriental Trading Company.
Yeah. Doing the whole wedding thing is not as stressful as I thought it was going to be, but also like I got so much done in the first month or 2 of us being engaged that like everything else is pretty much just like
on autopilot right now.
Yeah. I mean, everything's pretty much planned, and I'm happy with it. I'm really excited. Now the funny thing is that so you said that your sister's wedding was around like 250 people.
Yeah, it was a huge amount of people.
Our invite list is at like 95 right now. So, and I'm, expecting probably around 75, 80 to come. So one of the funniest things that like I've been kind of going back and forth on is like in the community of comedians, who do I invite? And I'll be honest, there have been some people where I'm just like, there is no way.
No. You have to, when you're inviting anybody for your wedding, a few people have told me, picture what this person would do blackout drunk, because that's always a possibility on the table.
Yeah.
And then if that's not something, that's behavior you want at your wedding, maybe don't invite them.
Yeah. I think I've only invited like some of my closer friends in the comedy community. So like you're invited.
Woo! I'm invited to the wedding.
Yay!
I was wondering where my invite was.
You're not gonna get. Nobody's getting invites this early. Oh my gosh! So many. We had a get together recently where one of my friends saw the save the date on the fridge. She was like, "Where's my save the date?" And I was like, "Well, it was at the engagement party, with the favors. You just pick one up with the favor." And she was like, "Well, nobody told me that, so I'm not invited." I was like, "You were at the engagement party. You are definitely invited."
See, I've got this this thing that came because like I've been to a lot of weddings, and I'm kind of out of the wedding bunch at this point, because at this point I'm 38, and like all of my friends have gotten married, several divorced, and like if they get married again, probably not having a big wedding. And I think I can't even tell you the last wedding I went to. It may have been my second youngest cousin's wedding, and that was like 5 years. There had to have been a wedding I've gone to more recently than that. But kind of the way it goes with wedding invitations, because I have had a lot of close friends I have not been invited to their wedding for, and it's nothing personal generally. Like Colin, I think he listens to this podcast a little bit. He was my best friend in grad school. He lived like down the street from us in Westchester. He and I bonded over the Song of Ice and Fire books like 2 years before it became a show, because we were the only people we had known that actually read those books. And so we just would drink beer and geek out. And he was a super close friend of mine. And I knew his wife actually pretty well too, because she used to hang out with us. And I wasn't invited to his wedding. And I hung out with him, maybe 2 weeks before his wedding. And we hung out with some old friends from Westchester, too, who were not as close with him. And they were sort of begrudgingly like, Colin, why didn't you invite me to your wedding? And he was like, dude, a wedding is super expensive. My fiance and I are having 50 people total, including both of our families, just to keep costs down. We couldn't invite very many people. And I wasn't necessarily offended. I wasn't invited to his wedding. But ever since then, I've kind of been like, generally... if somebody doesn't invite me to their wedding, it's probably just a financial discussion. Also, maybe they don't want to see Blackout Hal get completely wasted and ruin the wedding.
Well, here's the thing, and what I think a lot of people should keep in mind, and exactly like you said, it's a cost factor. Because think about it, if you're invited to a wedding, it generally will cost $100 just to have you there. More than half of that is literally just to feed you. I mean, it's
and then
insane.
Alcohol is involved in some way too. So.
Right. So it's really like I have been fighting really hard to keep everyone that I want to be there, but also like I'm not made of money, people. So, which
brings me to another point too, which this was a very hard lesson I learned in going to weddings in general is make sure you bring some sort of present whatsoever.
A card would be nice.
Yeah, so, because this happened a couple of times when I lived in California, I was like flat broke all the time, which is part of the reason I didn't stay there very long. Like, there's nothing more depressing than working like 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, and then just having no money. And two of my very best friends' weddings, like, because they were getting married to each other the first year I was out there, I could barely afford to get a plane ticket and drive there because it cost me probably about $650 of money I barely had. And I didn't get them a present for it. And I found out years later they were like super, like one of them was okay with it, but the other one like super held a grudge with me over it. And I was kind of like, I had no money. Like me getting there was kind of that did not pass as a.
Well, I think if you're a good friend, that 9 times out of 10, like if it was me, right? Like if you came to my wedding and you didn't bring me a present, I would assume there was a good reason for that.
See, you're a good person like that.
Yeah, like I would just be like, they probably didn't have the means or what have you. Like I wouldn't really judge on that. And what I do love is some of the trends I'm seeing with how people are doing like wedding gifts and things like that is like, for example, a lot of people who are getting married now. So like I keep anyway. So I've been living on my own since I was 19. So,
yay.
Yes, thank you.
You're way ahead of where I was at 19.
So there are some things that I don't need that most people would get people that are getting married.
That's a good point.
And listen, I have been working so hard to downsize what's in my apartment already. I took 2 huge boxes to Second and Charles yesterday of like DVDs and like I cannot tell you how many of them weren't even like opened. I went full hoarder and was just like I just had them. So I took in all these DVDs and some books and got like $100 worth of store credit. It was crazy. So long story short, I don't have room for shit. So what I'm seeing online a lot is like people just doing like honeymoon funds and like Ryan and I on the Knot, we have like a first house fund.
I was going to suggest like you could tell people to like just give cash as a what am I trying to say this early in the morning? As like a starter fund for like a down payment on a house.
Yeah.
Because when I used to have this problem quite a bit when I lived in my last 3 apartments where I just didn't have room for shit. But when you move into a house, suddenly you have room for shit. And not just room for shit, but like if you don't have a requisite amount of furniture, your house looks like it's totally empty. This was an interesting thing because my parents' house has generally been pretty cluttered as long as I've remembered it. And, excuse me.
Hal has some indigestion.
It's this coffee early in the morning. But anyway, so I've mentioned a few times before, my brother-in-law digitized a lot of our home movies because my parents had a movie camera and they recorded a lot of stuff growing up, which I'm thankful for now because we can see all of it. Like, and we were watching like either Christmas or like something from maybe the first or second year we lived in my parents' house, like the house that they live in now. And the living room was like threadbare. Like there was a TV cabinet in the back corner. There was like one couch and 2 chairs and maybe a table someplace. But like they had just gone from a fairly like meager starter home to like this giant like nicer home. And that's financially stressful for you. And they just didn't have a lot of furniture. And I thought that was really interesting that sometimes it just takes a while to accumulate the things that you put in your house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the same thing. Like when I first moved into my apartment, it wasn't very cluttered or anything like that, but I've lived there for 7 years now. And it's like, and having Ryan move in has been an interesting whirlwind. Because I'm like, oh shit, now I have to make room for Ryan. And actually last week I got a text from Ryan and it was like, I said, hey, what are you up to? And he was like, I'm getting rid of the TV stand. I was like, okay.
Doesn't he need to consult you on this first? Or?
Yes. Well, we had already talked about it.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
But the whole thing is that there were drawers in the TV stand. And I was like, there's a lot of shit in those drawers. Did you take the stuff out? And I was like, okay, did you just throw things away or did you make a pile? And he didn't message me. Well, he said, well. And I was like, well? And then he didn't respond. I was like, Ryan? And so I called him. I was like, bruh, where's my shit?
This is like $20 worth of Second and Charles credit we're talking here.
So he was like, yeah, I made a pile for you. I'm like, okay, great. I came home and my apartment was trashed. It was everywhere. I was a little overwhelmed. And we ended up dismounting the television, putting it up on the other end of the wall, moving the couch, moving my desk out somewhere else. And like, it was a whole lot of change. But now that the dust has settled, Ryan and I were chatting yesterday or the day before, and he said, now that we've made some changes, it feels like our place and not just your place. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cute.
Yeah, that is cute.
Yeah. Let's see. So wedding stuff is good. Do you do anything fun for St. Patrick's Day?
Not really. So actually, I did. I went over to dinner for my parents at my parents' house. And one of the movies that my mom had this set list of like movies on VHS that she showed us a lot as the kids. And one of the movies that she showed a lot was this. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie called Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
No.
It's most famous these days. It was a 1959 Disney movie. It's very charming, takes place in Ireland, and is about as Irish as you could possibly fucking get. The plot of the movie is that this old man named Darby O'Gill goes on these maybe whimsical adventures that involve King Brian, king of the leprechauns, who's somewhat of a trickster and somewhat of a friend to him. But every time, he captures King Brian in a sack to show his bar, but King Brian will turn himself into a rabbit so that nobody can see he's a leprechaun. But he sees King Brian, so you don't actually know if this is just Darby O'Gill making up all these stories or if the trickster leprechaun god is really in his midst. I like to think that King Brian was real. But it's most famous for the fact that a very young Sean Connery makes his very first film appearance in it. Super young. We're talking and it's weird because it's only 3 or 4 years before Dr. No came out, but Sean Connery is I don't know, this 20 some odd year old, I think that's how old he was at the time, young supporting character in this movie who's wooing Darby O'Gill's daughter, but also kicking them out of their house. It's almost a romantic comedy.
I'm going to have to check that out. That actually sounds pretty fire.
It's on Disney Plus, and that's the only reason we watched it is because I knew my mom loved this movie growing up and showed it to us so much. And then I was reading an AV Club article on the 20 best Irish movies and where you can see them. And number 19 was Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And I was like, no shit, this is on Disney Plus. Because Disney Plus, for everybody who does not subscribe to it to watch The Mandalorian, with the exception of Song of the South, has every fucking thing Disney has ever done.
I love it. I use Disney Plus all the time. And I know that this isn't as obscure, but one of my favorite Disney films is The Sword and the Stone.
Oh, yeah. I just watched this the other day, actually.
I love that movie. I love it so much. I'm always quoting Mad Madam Mim, and like. Just like today, like I'll look outside. I didn't do it today, but like when it's a really nice day out, I'll be like, I hate sunshine. I hate horrible, wholesome sunshine. And it's just, she cracks me up. I just love that movie so much.
Yeah, so I forget what I was doing. I was doing something where I had to leave for a little bit. Or no, maybe it was I was coming home from work, and Lauren was at the house last weekend, and she watched Sword in the Stone. And I was like, I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid. And then I started watching it at one point when she had to go do something. And I was like, I'd forgotten how cool this movie was.
It was so cool. Mm-hmm. And it just like, I felt that the storytelling in that movie was very pleasing. Mm-hmm. It was just like well-paced. Things escalated the way that they should have. And I really enjoy that film.
Yeah, it's another instance of Disney taking something that's like, Arthurian legend is pretty dirty too, so like, and pretty like violent, and they made it into like this charming movie. Not where, you know, no Modred, no King Arthur accidentally sleeps with his half sister and produces the knight who's going to kill him as his half son. You know, taking all. It's funny too. Like something I did want to mention as well was my dad has a crusade against Disney Plus right now. And it is entirely, he's by his own admission 100% related to. Cara Dune being kicked off of Mandalorian for supporting the insurrection and also calling the United States Nazi Germany.
Good Lord.
Which led to a lot of other uncomfortable conversations where I found out my dad buys into the Tucker Carlson nonsense that there was no insurrection, which I could queue up lots of videos that directly contradict exactly that thing. But when you're that deep, there's just no changing somebody's weird addled mind. But like, this is something I wanted to like muse a little bit about too. I feel like this is what a lot of conservative cancel culture does to people is like it isolates you from actual art, so that the only art that you can consume are the things being spewed by talking heads like Tucker Carlson, so that like you're not like my dad has had a crusade against the Oscars for like 20 plus years because they're too political, ignoring the fact that, you know, all art is political inherently in some way, shape, or form. But think about that, like because Rush Limbaugh has told him the Oscars are political and left-wing, he's lost 20 years of consuming, again, like the Oscars are very uneven as far as art goes, but culturally relevant art in the way of movies, and he loves movies. So that, I feel like, is an insidious tactic on that side to like literally deprive you of other art in the name of maintaining the religion of conservatism.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I could really say anything more than what you've already said on that, because you're just spot on.
Yeah, it reminds. What made me think of this actually was, have you met or interacted with Jerry Stevens at all through like the Vid Jam or the improv theater community?
I couldn't say.
He's done a lot. Like his movies, I generally think are pound for pound the best ones. Like I'm trying to think what you would have seen. He did the, I didn't get to see this movie yet because I missed part of the screening, but Blood Flows from My Paintbrush was his one for the horror vid jam. He did the one for the spring one where we did Crossing Paths, where it was Liz Curtis on The Interview, where she's drinking detergent. Yeah. But anyway, long tangent short. He posted something that was a story about like evangelicals a while back talking about how like they'd be sent out to proselytize people who didn't want to hear the word of God and were met hostilely because they didn't want to be told to live their lives differently for something they didn't believe in. And so the person would go back very like, you know, down, that they couldn't save anybody, and would feel like the entire world was against them. And this was very deliberate because it means that like the only safe place that you feel is within the same evangelical community that you're throwing people out there to the wolves, essentially, to proselytize your religion. So it's sort of like cult mechanics, I think, essentially, to keep you insular, keep the world small, essentially. Like, and yeah, this is my rant.
And all this because I wanted to watch Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Oh, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks is on there too.
I love Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
This was another movie that my mom had on VHS that we watched a ton as kids. And like a lot of VHSs, there was an entire middle section missing that we lost like 10 minutes of it every time we watched it. But I watched, a couple of years ago, I watched that because I saw a Sherman Brothers documentary. And then I was just going through, like, because they talk about Bed Knobs and Broomsticks and like, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I love Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
But not a Disney movie, so it's not on Disney+.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Do you know who produced Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, by the way?
No.
Somewhat tied into our Darby O'Gill and the Little People discussion. It was Albert Broccoli, who had his entire career is literally just all the James Bond movies and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
That is hilarious.
Isn't that weird? Like, he
I love
specifically, he got Dick Van Dyke, he got the Sherman Brothers, and like wanted to do a competitive musical to like Walt Disney's musicals, which I think he succeeded pretty well. But isn't that funny and weird?
Yeah. So this just occurred to me because, and let me walk you through the thought process on this one. So we were talking about, you had recorded Bedknobs and Broomsticks from the television or something like that, right?
The preview for the Disney Channel that we got 3 times a year.
Yeah. So that led me to think, oh yeah, we used to have like tons of VHS tapes that were just movies that were recorded from the television and things like that. One of them was The Princess Bride.
Oh, that's a great one.
And my grandmother didn't like the very end of it because Inigo Montoya was like, I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
So the cursing was the problem.
Yeah, the cursing was the problem.
You son of a bitch.
And then there was another film that we had that was recorded to VHS. I don't know how somebody in that house managed to get this done. But because, listen, my grandparents were conservative, Trinity United Methodist church-going people. And somehow, somewhere along the line, somebody recorded Spaceballs to VHS in that household. I don't know how they did it. I don't know.
Spaceballs feels like it would be like there's a couple of like dumb dad joke level dirtiness in there, but I feel like Spaceballs, as far as comedy goes, is pretty tame.
I was just like shook, like when I was watching it, because I was like, "You guys are okay with this?" Because this is the same woman who smacked me on the mouth when I said the word crud.
Crud.
So I'm just saying, it doesn't add up to me. But this also has led me to this thought, which was the thought that led us through this thought process.
Tell me about the thought that led us to the thought, to the other thought, and the other thought before it.
Yeah. So I think this might be the best place to ask about this because I can't for the life of me figure out what the name of it is.
Okay.
It is a children's, I don't know if it was a movie or what it was.
Children's movie or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. And it starred like one of those wacky lady people, the ones that wore like striped leggings and like skirts and things.
I bet Midler type. Okay.
I'm thinking more of like you ever see The Big Comfy Couch?
Yeah.
That type.
Oh, so like a lamb chops person. Okay.
Yeah. And she lived in a little town, like a fake town, and the whole premise of the movie was that all of the colors disappeared. And she had to go find all the colors and get them back where they were supposed to be. Okay. So, like, I think maybe I recall, like, she's talking to these 2 twins. They might be purple or yellow. And, like, they do a whole little song. And that is what I have.
Was this a cartoon?
No, it was live action.
Okay. I don't know if I can help you on this.
Okay, well, if anyone listening can help me on this, I would be appreciative.
I have actually, I doubt that anybody's going to be able to tell me what this was because I have something that's been clawing at my brain for like 15 years that I can't figure out what it is too. So when we were growing up, there were a stable of VHSs that we would rent regularly from Farmore because there was no Blockbuster here yet. Everybody remember Farmore?
I don't know what that is.
It was like a pharmacy / video rental / everything store. It was where the Salvation Army currently is, on Jonestown Road.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Salvation Army and the Magic Rent to Own used to be this one giant place called Farmore, spelt Phar more.
Oh.
But yeah, we had this stable of VHSs that we would rent really regularly from there. And one of them was like kids' ghost stories. And it was a cartoon, just to throw that out there. And it was like an anthology. So there were a lot of them in there. But the only one I can remember is this story about this like British gentleman who goes out to the bar, gets way too drunk, and he starts with like, the movie starts with him like having one last drink when he definitely shouldn't. And he's like, oh, what should I drink to? I'll drink to your health. And then he goes to a carriage graveyard and passes out. And when he wakes up, a ghostly carriage carrying 2 like male ghosts And this is like Victorian era too. And then a female ghost picks him up. They go to this house where the ghosts get into a duel and kill each other, and leaving him with just the girl ghost, who they hug each other because like the carriage taking them to hell is coming for them, like piloted by a skeleton with a flaming skull. And the dream ends just as it arrives, and he wakes up in the carriage graveyard thinking it was a dream, but still has the handkerchief from the female ghost. I have no idea what this is, and I doubt anybody's going to be able to tell me this.
If somebody is able to find that for you, I'd be interested in it because it sounds kind of cool.
It was very cool, and Google is generally very helpful in helping me find things I don't remember the names of from a kid, but I could never find anything on there for cartoon ghost duel is the best that I could do.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody happens to have rented that videotape from Farmore too, talk to me, because there may be a reward in your future.
A reward, like a high five, maybe.
Yeah, a high 10 if somebody can really tell me about this.
See, I had something else I wanted to say, but then my contact fell out and had to deal with that. So that was an unfortunate situation.
Well, we could talk more. So VHS is also like what was I saying? The VHS for whatever I was talking about, where we lost 10 minutes of it, was not a one-off thing. We had lots of VHSs where we lost minutes. Like Adventures in Babysitting was another one we watched a lot of. And there was an entire 10 minutes missing from the moment that they get picked up by the tow truck driver in the very beginning until they get driven into the place where the stolen cars are. So I never knew what happened in the between there until I finally had it on DVD years later. And I was like, oh, the guy's wife was cheating on him. He shot the window out of their car, and they got stolen in a car that was being stolen.
I feel like that was a very important 10 minutes that you missed.
It was incredibly important, and that was lost because we had this like gap in the VHS tape where it would just go to and all of a sudden they're in the garage with all the scary people. One
of my favorite movies that I watched when I was a kid on VHS, and for the longest time I couldn't remember what it was until I finally Googled kangaroo martial arts.
Oh, probably Kangaroo Jack?
Nope. Warriors of Virtue.
What?
Have you ever seen Warriors of Virtue?
No.
Dude, this movie's fucking wild.
Tell me about this movie.
So this kid, you've seen The Neverending Story.
Many, many times.
It's very similar. So what happens is this kid, like, he gets bullied at school and like he's kind of a loser. Well, he and some of the bullies end up going to like this abandoned building, and like they've like lured him there to like bully him essentially. So they go into the abandoned building, and there's this large room like in the basement, and there's this kind of catwalk across this chasm, and the chasm for some reason has like this whirlpool of water.
Ooh, okay.
And so the bullies push him into this whirlpool.
Bullies? Come on.
And I'm like, are they trying to kill him?
Yeah.
And once he comes out of the whirlpool, he wakes up in this fantasy land. So kind of like an Alice in Wonderland kind of situation. But he wakes up in this forest, and basically the premise is he runs into these kangaroos that are basically, I don't remember what it, because it's not CGI. Like, this is
probably animatronic.
Not even animatronic. I think they just
a guy in a costume.
Yeah, I think it's well, I'd have to rewatch it honestly now that I think about it. But like they're super tall, like and they do martial arts. And they're called the Warriors of Virtue. And they're fighting against this guy.
I'm going to look this up while you're talking.
You have to. They're like, I don't remember the reason, but their villain, I guess, was like weirdly attractive to me as a child.
An attractive kangaroo?
No, it wasn't even a kangaroo. It was like a person. It was a whole ass person.
Oh, wow. Look at this. I will say, I mean, I'm not seeing these in motion, but the costumes look pretty impressive.
I mean, honestly, for the time that it came, when did it come out? Does it say?
1997.
Yeah. So go watch this movie. I'm gonna go watch this movie again.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch this movie actually when I get home later tonight, because I have a drone shoot this afternoon before it gets too cold and windy. But
yeah. No, but I mean, it's just one of the most unhinged movies I've ever seen. And eventually, like, he goes back to the real world and like I don't remember if he beats up the bullies or what, but
he learned kung fu from the Warriors of Virtue.
He did. He did learn kung fu from the Warriors of Virtue. Yeah. But I just never. Here's the thing. That's all I remember from the movie, so I don't remember what the conflict is, and I also don't remember what the circumstances of why they're kangaroos. I just don't know. I
mean, sometimes a kangaroo warrior is just a kangaroo warrior.
Well, I never questioned it growing up, but why does the kangaroo don't do martial arts?
Just,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
because
it's not
of
like
the force?
kangaroos aren't native to the Asian countries.
That's also true.
So I'm just wondering how one gets to the other one.
There's a lot of Asian intersection in Australia, but I don't think that exactly counts. Oh, yeah. Like, there's a huge Asian population in Australia just because of its proximity to so many places. Like, James Wan, for instance, Saw director and all-around awesome horror and movie director, is Asian Australian. I don't know if you watch Mythic Quest, but Poppy is also Asian Australian on that show as well. If you haven't seen Mythic Quest, you should. I haven't. Oh, my God. Do you have Apple Plus?
No.
Oh, that's
my dad might.
Yeah, well, other than Ted Lasso, I think Mythic Quest is the other must-watch show. It's like, do you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Mm-hmm. It's Rob McElhenney as the star, and him and Charlie Day. Charlie Day is not in the series, but they're the creators of the show and the showrunners, and it's kind of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is fantastic, but it's a very specific brand of very aggressive humor. And this show is kind of like what they would do if they were able to put on a slightly more subtle realm of humor that takes place at like a World of Warcraft company. And it's really great. They do a lot of episodes too that are very like heartwarming and more like on the touchy, like hearty side of comedy. And I really, it has basically like every smaller character you could imagine from It's Always Sunny in there. Like Cricket is a main character on the show too.
Oh, cool.
Where he's allowed to be just a normal person and not the degenerate priest that keeps getting fucked over by the gang.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, Mythic Quest would be a big recommendation.
I'll have to check that out. There was something that I was thinking of and I don't remember what it was.
You will someday. And if you don't, it wasn't important.
It was good, though.
I have something that could bring us down that I wanted to talk about on the podcast.
Oh, down?
Yeah, way down.
Oh, man, dang it.
This is the depression vacation. Actually, I was talking to two of my witnesses that I had on Friday who were new witnesses. Somebody just mentioned the podcast in passing while we were shooting the lottery. And they're like, oh, we want to listen to your podcast. And I told them what it was about. I'm like, oh, it's called Depression Vacation. And it's like me and my friend Shannon, we're both comedians. We're both sort of funny, adjacent people. And we talk about a lot of things that are bumming us out and other random topics. And they're like, I don't know if I want to listen to that. And this was like a younger set of witnesses too, like maybe mid-50s. So.
Oh, yes. Younger, mid-50s.
That is like, as far as witnesses go, that's super young for us.
I don't know if I would recommend our podcast to that demographic.
I recommend our podcast to everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course. But like I've talked about my podcast to, other people that I run into, and most people say like, oh, that would be fun. That sounds like a fun podcast. So I think we do an okay job.
Our numbers have gone up, I've noticed, since I realized I could connect it to Alexa devices. Because I like to listen to our podcast after it's published like once a week just to make sure I didn't mess anything up. Like, for instance, I realized I misspelled I misspelled next in the title of our last episode because after I published it, I was like, Alexa, play Depression Vacation podcast. Playing Depression Vacation, episode 21. Shannon and Hal talk Star Trek, the Nexer generation, because I put the R instead of the T. And I'm like, gotta change this. But yeah, remember, like, because that makes it a little bit easier to listen to. But yeah, I recommend it to pretty much everybody. If it's not their cup of tea, that's cool.
You should recommend it too, dear listeners.
Yeah. Everybody, tell people to play Depression Vacation podcast on any smart device.
Yeah. Spend some time with us. Have a good time.
Yeah. On the note of a good time, too, I have actually been feeling super good the last 3 days, and the reason is because I have more or less stopped drinking the last 3 days.
Hey, that's nice. Are you taking your meds?
I am. I'm back to, that was something else I want to talk about too, because a couple of people did reach out to me, including my girlfriend, being like, you are in serious trouble. You haven't been taking your meds. And so the very next day, I forget whether I'd already done this or whether I did this after Lauren like chastised me out of a place of like love. But I talked to my doctor. And my doctor was saying that, like, if I was experiencing an uptick in energy, maybe try a half a dose again to see where that's going. And I think that's been perfect, honestly.
Good. Yeah.
I still have more energy than I did at a full dose. And, like, but here's the interesting thing, too, about, like, the drinking in general is that, like, for whatever reason, about the time I started taking my anxiety medication, I just, like, would drink almost every single night on it. Mm-hmm. And my therapist even told me, like, this is because I talk with him very honestly about a number of things.
Well, as you should.
And he was telling me that, like, you really should watch the intake because you're essentially like, and he's like, you're taking something that essentially counteracts what your medication is supposed to do. And I'm like, oh, it's like running a humidifier and a dehumidifier next to each other at the same time. And he's like, I like that. I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, for whatever reason, like, I'm currently like 3 days without having any sort of drinks whatsoever. And that's the longest streak I've gone on since starting my medication in October. And just to clarify, like, this isn't like getting blackout drunk. This is more like...
Yeah, just having a drink or two when you get home.
Yeah, like 1 to 4 beers or something like that. But it's, enough to elevate my mood, which is the thing you shouldn't take alcohol for. And then also enough just to put me a little bit off the next morning so that, like, I sleep too late and don't go to the gym. Or even more, like, a lot of the weight gain associated with how I've been recently has just been from over drinking for months, I think. And, like, I don't know, I just sort of woke up on Wednesday, I wasn't feeling quite it, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. And the last, like, 3 days, there's been a better uptick in energy, I've been going to the gym regularly. I still have some ways to go because my sleep has not corrected itself, but, like, yeah, that's because, like, I don't know if this is a case for you, and not to put you on the spot, but, like, I've been a problem drinker probably for like 12-ish years, maybe a little bit longer, like 11 or 12 years, I'd say. Like, ever since I sort of realized, hey, if I drink a lot of rum in the evening, I'm not so sad about all the things I'm sad about anymore. And, like, I've gone through periods where I've been able to, like, not drink at all and, like, be better about my alcohol consumption. But, like, the problem drinking has been a constant in my personality, I'd say, for about 12-ish years.
I don't know if I would consider myself to ever have been, like, a problem drinker. But I will say that, like, I've used other unhealthy things to make myself feel better that I probably shouldn't have.
Yeah. It's a very human thing, I think.
Yeah. And I think for me, probably the first thing that came to mind was, like, sex. And just kind of using that as, like, a self-esteem booster.
Oh my
almost.
God. Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. Like, if I'm ever feeling, like, super gross or fat or anything, which usually is more in my mind, I think, than I would let on, like, sex is generally a mood booster for me because if it's available to me, it makes me feel desired and desirable and good and all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would definitely say that that's something that I keep track of, in terms of I'm trying to find healthier ways to make myself feel better. I also have been working with my therapist about vocalizing my emotions. So what I've noticed is that instead of feeling my emotions, I've gone completely into, like, a logical, rational problem-solving mode rather than dealing with emotions. And so I am trying to give myself pause before I react to things and, like, say out loud, like, this is how that makes me feel.
Yeah.
And I've been testing it out at work, and that's been super helpful. Especially just, like, if a coworker, says something to me or like something is going on, if I say out loud, that's frustrating for me. And this is why, or, okay, let me take a second because I'm a little overwhelmed. Like, that's actually been really helpful to help me, like, acknowledge the emotions and feel them for a moment before I go into my logical problem-solving mode. And it's actually making me a lot happier. And I think for my coworkers, too, it's made them feel a little more trusting of me as a manager and a leader.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just, like, responding. I'm taking a moment and, like, being a human in the minute that it happens.
This is a huge problem with one of the managers at our work. Like, this person is very reactive and defensive with pretty much everything, which it comes from a human place, like all the time. Like we all put a lot of pride in our jobs, and we like a certain amount of our identity, as you well know, is like associated with our jobs. But there have to be healthy ways to deal with frustrations, and also like this person is also sort of conflict averse with people that are not below them. So like I think that's a bad category essentially, like because you have to be willing to go to bat for your employees. I think if you're like every time I've been a manager, I've always like very much been firmly on the side of my employees if anything goes down. Like I got into so many arguments with my boss at WITF about that all the time, which is why I would rank him as one of the worst bosses I ever had. Just because like I think that if you're a boss who is cruel to the people underneath you or just like doesn't hold yourself accountable, I think that's a form of bullying, essentially, because you have all these people whose entire livelihoods in a capitalist society are in the palm of your hand, and you're wielding that power and responsibility to just be mean to them, knowing they can't really leave you because otherwise they'll be destitute and starving on the streets. Yeah. And I think that that's like the most worst and insidious form of bullying. So I like that you as a manager try to do that with your employees a lot because it...
Yeah. And the thing is, it feels weird because like so much of the corporate Kool-Aid is, completely separate yourself from the emotions and, don't feed into any kind of negativity or anything like that. But I've, and I fed into that for a really long time. But more recently, I've been, like I said, acknowledging how I feel about things. And while still being positive and productive towards getting us to work together as a team and do what we need to do to run the business.
You are a good boss then. You're awesome.
Yay. I've heard good things. Actually, I don't know if the employee knows, but we just did like annual reviews and stuff. So I sat down with all my employees and did their annual reviews.
Much better than sitting down and having to fire people, right?
Oh my God. So this one of my employees, like she submitted the acknowledgement of like, yeah, my manager talked to me and all that kind of thing. But they can add comments. And the comment that she put in there was like, I love both of my bosses and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if she knows that I can see that or not, but it made me feel really good.
I love to hear things like obviously, like, especially in a boss situation, you are in a lot of hard situations sometimes where you're not going to please everybody. But I feel like the best way to go with things is to, like, I don't know, try to please people at least.
Well, and transparency is so important.
Oh, my God.
And just making sure that, like, when you make a decision, acknowledging, like, hey, I know that this isn't going to be the most popular decision. This is what's going to be the best overall and try to hit all of our goals. So really just kind of saying like, hey, I hear you. And I took that into account when I was making this decision.
See, this is something I feel like, thankfully has come up in like your generation of people that I've gotten into a little bit as well. I was always more on the people pleasing side of being a manager or a boss anyway, but a huge problem I feel like with my office a lot of the times is that there's a complete lack of transparency. And when I was going for my MBA, like most of the classes I took before I dropped out of grad school were like management type courses, because like also wanting to be a filmmaker, managing personalities I think is 80% of the job on any set, and just making sure people, especially if they're working for very little or for nothing, are just happy and having a good time. And one of the things I remember my management professor in the book had told us was like, you need to like have reasons for pretty much anything you're doing for your employees, especially the unpopular decisions. And that's where what I was talking about earlier with the one of his mantras was like, if somebody is questioning why you're doing something and you don't have a reason for that, perhaps you should reevaluate whether or not you should do that. And a lot of times in my job, like there's a lot of lack of transparency. For worse and for worse. And a lot of what boils down to things is because I said so, which our management book had said is the absolute worst thing you can say to an employee, because you're evoking essentially the full authoritative control of a parent. You're telling them, when you say, because I said so, that they are not adults who are able to make their own decision. And more importantly, they're not invested in the success or failures of whatever work culture you're trying to prove. So if they're not invested in the work culture, they just don't care about their jobs. It's like they say in Office Space, like that'll make you work just hard enough not to get fired and nothing more.
Yeah.
So like that's parts of work culture that I absolutely detest, because You want to treat all, like, even if you're managing people, you treat them as equals, I think.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like I said, you're just an insidious bully if you're not
Yeah.
equals. And I feel like some people who are managers I've worked with, that's the entire motivation for them to become managers, is just to wield power over people, which, yeah. Hopefully you haven't had to deal with too many managers like that in your time.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I've been so well, that's why I've been a manager so often, is because like I think a work environment that is positive is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And so if I see that that's not the environment that's being created, I want to be the person that drives that change.
You are awesome, Shannon. Applause for Shannon. I love that smile that you made the 2 times that I've said. I wish the people at home listening could see that. But yeah, that's basically my only motivation for like. The last time like an assistant manager job did open up for my job, I did apply for it, and I did like go head first into getting it, even though it's kind of a shit job because you're on call like all the time. I really don't think you can have much of a life, which is something I try to take into context when I have conflicts with this particular manager, is that it is kind of a shit job because of the structure and like how you're on the level. But like my only motivation for it was basically because my job right now is a pretty awesome job. Like I really love it. I love 80% of the people I work with. I love doing things with the witnesses, hearing their stories. It's like half a day in the office, half a day at the studio. So it's never really particularly boring. And it pays pretty well. And so like the question came in my mind when I was doing prep work for like applying for an assistant manager job was like, why exactly do you want to like add responsibility? And you can't say it's just money because that's not like a good enough factor, which it is a factor. But kind of like I like managing people because I think that if you're a manager, one of your main responsibilities is to try to make things as better as possible for your employees without sabotaging the status quo. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of wanted to like have the opportunity, because I've actually been a manager more often than I've been like somebody who's being managed in my work life. And I don't know, I just would like to create a better atmosphere. And this all came, by the way, like we're almost out of time, but I have a story about how like I came to be this way as a manager too.
Go for it.
Oh, so I worked at Hershey Park for 8 years, 4 years in high school and then 4 years in college. And the last 2 years in college, I was like a ride group supervisor, which was like the level you get to where you're actually like the only person in charge on a given shift for like 30 rides in the park and staffing and everything. And I was terrible at it my first year. Like it was very much and these were people who were my friends prior, like that I'd worked with for years, and then I became their boss, and I took a very like my way or the highway approach to managing them, and like would take things incredibly personally when they would not respond well to not being treated well. And like all these people who were my friends like turned on me like over the course of a month because I was being a super shit like supervisor essentially. Like there was a little bit of latitude because we were friends, but then like. And I really wanted to get better, so I actually called in like the one who had been a friend of mine, who had been like one of the most vocally turned against me and like enemies now at this point. I'm like, what can we do to make this better? And she laid out like all the things I was doing wrong, like the disrespect I was showing people, and they were all like such incredibly good points. And I told her like during this meeting, like I'm only doing this so I can learn to manage people better. So like, what would you suggest? And like. Not all of her suggestions were reasonable, but I'd say like 85% of them were. And that really, it was too far gone to like fix that particular situation. But like when I left Hershey Park and like got into the actual job sphere, all of the things that she had said to me were very ingrained in my brain. And I still think to this day, like it was a really horrible experience because I made it a horrible experience, but I've learned how to be a better person and better manager from it.
Good for you.
Yeah. Did you have like any of these problems like first management, or were you always just awesome?
No, I definitely had a lot of issues at first. And it actually was really funny because one of the people that I worked with when I was like in my early days of management, we hated each other when we were working together. For the first year or so, like we were just always butt heads. And then one day it just kind of flipped and we were like best friends. And I think part of it was I evolved as a manager because for the longest time I was very strict, very by the book, and not necessarily my way or the highway, but just being not being very flexible.
Yeah.
And so I realized a lot of things, like in my early management career. I was like, ooh, that's probably not the best way to get people's buy-in and not the best way to do things. So yeah, it's definitely been a huge learning process. And I actually, even with this job that I'm in right now, I'm still evolving and still learning to do things differently. And I think that I'm definitely a better manager now than I was 3 months ago.
Oh yeah, like if you're not growing at any aspect of not even just your job, but just like stand-up, filmmaking, improv, painting, running, getting in better shape, etc. I feel like, and this may not be a totally correct mantra, but like I had a football coach when I was playing football who always used to tell us, you either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same, which there are a couple of problems with that philosophy, but I think the core of it is correct. Like the core is kind of like, if you're doing something, do it better. Like always try to be better, because if you're not getting better, chances are you're probably just backsliding and regressing.
For sure. Yeah. We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, this particular episode. Do you have there was something else I wanted to... I don't even remember. Maybe for next time. But anything that you want to... You have a show coming up, right?
Yeah, April 1st. It'll be in Pottsville.
Woo!
We'll post about it on the Instagram. Lots of really funny people will be there, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, who's going to be on the bill with you?
On the scene. I was trying to avoid having to pull
I'm
out
sorry.
my phone.
I know Sarah is on it, because Sarah runs This Is Lager Laughs, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not Lager Laughs, this one in particular. This is...
It's somewhere in Pottsville, I know.
It's in Pottsville somewhere.
Hal put Shannon on the spot, and it sucks.
Yeah, it does. Play Lounge.
Ooh,
I don't
okay.
know what that is. But yeah, it'll be Ron Kane, J.R. Seabach, Sarah Cartwright, Joe Ament, and Eric Bevan.
Joe was the person, like, as I knew Ron and you on the list, and I was trying to, because I saw her post about this a while ago, and I was like, oh, Joe Omont.
Yeah.
Joe Omont. Like, I've had some really good talks with Joe Omont lately, and he's really shot up my list of people I really like at stand-up.
Yeah, I like him a lot, too. A couple weeks ago, after the HMAC mic, we all stayed for karaoke, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so my karaoke group has posted a couple of times that there is karaoke at HMAC.
On Mondays.
Yeah, it's run by the same person who used to run the River City thing, too.
Yeah.
And my first response was like, I know that there's a stand-up open mic there, so where is the karaoke exactly?
Yeah, So the karaoke happens after the mic. So what happened was they moved the mic up, so now it starts at 7:30 and is done by 8:30, and then karaoke starts at 9.
Okay, that works.
Yeah,
because karaoke didn't start till 9 at JB Love Drafts on my birthday anyway. That's something I want to get out to doing a lot more. So here's another insidious thing about drinking too much too, is it basically like put me into this horrible cycle of just not wanting to do things all the time, because like drinking would make me tired, would make me fat. Then I wouldn't want to go out and do things because I was tired, or I was embarrassed because I was gaining so much weight and I just didn't want to deal with people because my clothes didn't fit well. And it's like this whole horrible cycle that I'm hoping is like aside me now, so I can do karaoke and do more fun things.
Yeah, get out, do stuff.
So,
be with friends.
One thing I did want to mention too, because we just did a planning session about this yesterday, is there is we have the VidJam Safety conference that's coming up next weekend, but we have an event we're going to announce later this week, which I guess this could be a debut announcement of it. So Sam Melville had this idea of putting together like a massive VidJam project for the Harrisburg Fringe Festival in July. And what we're going to attempt to do is we're going to open registration for like 7 regular teams who want to, which if there's more than 7, we're just going to have to pick and choose randomly who gets in and who doesn't, are going to put together an hour-long movie.
Oh, cool.
Each team is going to be responsible for shooting about a 7-minute segment, maybe 7 to 8, which then over the course of a month, it's going to be April 14th to May 14th. And then Sam, I, and some other people are going to edit it together into an actual hour movie over the course of that time. It's going to play at Fringe Festival, I believe, twice at the Midtown Cinema. And I'm really excited for it because it's like a very, very ambitious project she came up with that I'm helping on the planning side as well. I think both of us are going to do teams, or at least throw our hats in the ring to do teams. But if anybody out there is interested in forming a team, I think the only prerequisite is that you've submitted a movie sometime in the last 2-ish years. I forget what we landed on for that, but like basically anybody who's submitted before recently is welcome to apply. And if you don't get selected for a team, we would definitely encourage and would really like any regular contributor to just like reach out to a team that got selected. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
But I'm really excited for that because I think it's going to be pretty cool. I've got I think 2 people already for a prospective team. I haven't even asked you yet.
I'll be on your team.
I think you're like a mainstay on my team at this point because let's see, how many in a row has it been? Because we did.
Oh gosh.
You Are Safe, Hand in Hand.
Crossing Paths.
Barnaby.
It's Not a Competition.
The Dentist, very briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the last 6 vid jams I've done, you've been in.
Yeah.
And also, I think, no, Ryan hasn't been, because Ryan broke the streak with Hand in Hand, which.
Right.
And then he couldn't do.
He wasn't in Crossing Paths, but he helped.
Oh, no, he was in Crossing Paths, don't you remember?
No, I'm sorry, not Crossing Paths. It's Not a Competition.
Oh, yeah, because I remember he was like, that was the first time I saw Ryan in like his untethered mode, basically, because he was just like running off into the woods occasionally to go just do things. And
That's my fiance.
And then you did your own vid jam after that too, which was very cool too.
Yes. So we want to, the next vid jam that comes around, my friend group is very interested in putting a team together. So.
Ooh, that could. So you might separate from the Newfoundland Films production.
Oh, maybe I'll do both. I don't know.
Possibly that could work. And if you need any equipment, let me know. I'm a madman with a camera, so. Yeah. Anyway, so anything else you want to add before we end our podcast this week?
That's all I got. We're going to have Liz Curtis this next episode, hopefully.
Yeah, I've talked with Liz about this. She wasn't on this week because I made a crucial scheduling mistake. It was all Hal's fault for not...
No one was going to point any fingers or name names.
But she and Shannon have been very nice about it. So we're going to have Liz on next week where we're going to talk about like songs and movies and things that just make us happy.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a happy time. We're going to get all the depressive subjects out of the way first, or maybe just rant about them for an hour and have to have Liz back next week to actually do the topic that we talked about. But yeah, thank you all.
To stay on topic.
Thank you all for listening. I've been Hal.
I've been Shannon.
And this was the Depression Vacation Podcast. Have yourselves a great week.